It took Shirley MacLaine until 91 to reveal this shocking information. For decades, she concealed the true tale of what transpired behind the scenes while grinning during interviews. She now reveals why she actually required distinct production schedules, different trailers, and even multiple publicity tours. Shouting matches on set. When it comes to the envious rivalries that turned film sets into battlefields, Hollywood's most brutally honest star is speaking up. In Richmond, Virginia, during the height of the Great Depression, Shirley MacLaine was born. Her father supported the family by working many jobs. In addition to helping to operate schools, he taught psychology and, when necessary, marketed real estate. Her mother was a Canadian with a history in theater. Later on, Shirley's entire future would be influenced by that. Shirley Temple, who was already a kid star at the time, inspired her name. It was almost like a sign. Even though he spelled their last name differently, her younger brother Warren Beatty would also make it to Hollywood. Her dad changed jobs, so the family traveled around a lot as she grew up, from town to town in Virginia. Shirley was brought up as a Baptist. Eventually, though, she would embrace more spiritual views. She was not only artistic as a child. And she was sporty. She was nicknamed Powerhouse because she hit more home runs than any of the boys when she played baseball with them. Shirley had an ankle issue prior to all of that, though. She continued to fall because they were weak. Her mother took her to ballet lessons in order to address this. What began as counseling became fixated. She thought it was fantastic. She attended the Washington School of Ballet for her training, and she never missed a class. She was frequently cast as male characters in performances since she was taller than the other girls. Backstage at one performance, she even fractured her ankle, but she nevertheless tightened her shoes and continued dancing. That was Shirley, stout, determined, and never giving up. But after a while, she came to the physical realization that she didn't have the correct feet for ballet. She left it after that. She didn't waste time deciding what to do next. She went to tryouts in New York before even graduating from high school. She had her first taste of theater when she was cast in a small part in a Subway adaptation of Oklahoma. She moved to New York City as soon as she graduated in 1952, leaving Arlington. She changed her name because producers found it difficult to pronounce, Shirley MacLaine Beatty. She became Shirley MacLaine and adopted her mother's maiden name. Soon that new name would be in the spotlight. She began in the chorus in Me and Juliet by Rodgers and Hammerstein. She was simply another dancer in the background, yet she was seen nonetheless. Then she got shot. As an understudy in the Pajama Game, she was employed. Shirley had to step in after the lead, Carol Haney, was hurt. It was a life-altering event, not merely a fortunate break. Hal B. Wallace, the producer, who was in the crowd, was blown away by her performance. After several months, it occurred once more. Shirley stepped in when Haney was hurt, and Wallace took the initiative this time. Shirley's transformation from backup dancer to Hollywood actress happened in an instant. Wallace made her an offer to work for Paramount for 5 years. It was in the 1950s. Although it was still in existence, Hollywood's old-school studio was beginning to show signs of weakness. Wallace was known for identifying stars early, and he recognized Shirley's special qualities. She was never given the opportunity to settle in. After 3 months, she found herself in Vermont, filming The Trouble with Harry, her debut, with none other than Alfred Hitchcock. Shirley's portrayal was so innovative that she received a Golden Globe for Best New Actress in this strange, dark comedy. She then left to go to the races. Her subsequent major role was in the acclaimed film Around the World in 80 Days. Shirley was pregnant while the movie was being filmed, although nobody knew this at the time. Sachi, her daughter, was born shortly after. Nevertheless, Shirley and her husband, Steve Parker, decided that Sachi would reside in Japan with her father and his mistress rather than remaining at home while Shirley concentrated on her work. Mother and daughter would subsequently experience intense strain as a result of this peculiar arrangement. She eventually became well known as a serious actor in 1958. In Some Came Running, she was specially chosen by Frank Sinatra to play Ginny. When it didn't work out, Shirley took over the role that was originally intended for Marilyn Monroe. She gave the part her all, brought a plush puppy to the set, remained in character off-camera, and performed flawlessly. Sinatra was an expert in his field. He predicted that having her character die in the movie would help her receive an Oscar nomination, so he advised the director to do it. And he was correct. Shirley's performance demonstrated that she was more than just a funny actor and earned her first Academy Award nomination. Behind the scenes, however, things weren't quite as dazzling. The man who had found her, Wallace, allegedly made unwanted advances. He allegedly pushed himself on her, and she gave him a strong slap in return, Shirley said. In the end, she won her lawsuit against him for breach of contract. When a Hollywood reporter published something derogatory about her years later, she smacked him in the mouth. The fact that she refused to be pushed around was demonstrated by that tale, which made headlines. By 1960, she had joined up with actor Jack Lemmon and director Billy Wilder to create The Apartment, one of the most famous movies of the time. Her character was Fran Q. Bellick, an innocent woman entangled in a complex workplace relationship. The film was a huge success. In addition to receiving 10 Oscar nominations, Shirley received a second nomination for Best Actress. Even though she didn't win that year, her performance was remarkable. She received attention for the part globally and won prizes abroad. Charlize Theron would later claim that Shirley gave the black and white movie a color vibe. Shirley MacLaine lived in the midst of Hollywood's heyday in the 1960s. She wasn't only another attractive person seeking notoriety. She was taking significant risks with the stories she wanted to convey and the roles she selected. She stunned everyone by starring in The Children's Hour in 1961. It was an audacious step. Her role was that of Martha Doby, Audrey Hepburn's character, a woman who subtly revealed her love for her best friend. It was scandalous to even allude to a lesbian connection at the time. Sexual perversion was still the term used to describe homosexuality in the Hays Code. Thus, MacLaine's actions were not only dangerous but also groundbreaking. Surprisingly, she later disclosed that she and Hepburn never discussed the central concept of the novel. The fact that no one spoke said much about how taboo the topic remained. When MacLaine's character commits suicide, the movie ends tragically. And regrettably, Hollywood adopted that as a trend. Delete the gay character. She had, however, unlocked a door that others were too scared to open. In 1963, just 2 years later, MacLaine took a totally different turn and featured in Irma la Douce. Her portrayal of a charming Parisian prostitute this time was adored by the public. She won a Golden Globe and was nominated for another Oscar since she was so good at the part. The thing that truly sticks out is how well she prepared for the role. For a deeper understanding of the life, she and Jack Lemmon really spent time with a real sex worker. Because of how genuine that meeting was, the woman had to depart midway to attend to a client. Even though the film only cost $5 million to make, it made nearly $25 million at the box office. In today's currency, that would be equivalent to earning hundreds of millions. It might have been a Marilyn Monroe movie, but she left after reading the director's offensive remarks about her. MacLaine stepped into the position and made it memorable. Because of the pimp persona, Lemmon had also been cautioned against doing it, but it all paid off. The movie broke box office records in the Netherlands. It was seen by about 1/3 of the nation. In 1969, Sweet Charity followed. MacLaine not only starred in it, but also made it happen. She presented the concept to Universal, demanded that Bob Fosse be the director, and managed to pull it off. Despite Fosse's inexperience as a director, MacLaine had faith in him. She gave him back the favor after he had given her a great break years ago. In those days, the project cost $20 million, which is equivalent to $150 million today. And despite the fact that it didn't generate much revenue, it demonstrated her courage. Amazingly, the original Broadway part was written for Gwen Verdon. However, Fosse's wife did not receive the role. A larger moniker was what the studio desired. That was the name MacLaine. It was an iconic outcome. She showcased the dance ability she had been honing from her early stage days in the number If My Friends Could See Me Now, which is still spoken about today. It wasn't all smooth behind the scenes. While the producer desired a more polished tone, Fosse wanted to maintain the gritty, unpolished sound. Fosse had MacLaine by his side the entire time. Despite taking so many risks, MacLaine maintained her star power. She received 2 Golden Globes and 5 nominations during the 1960s. A major producer of Sweet Charity was replaced because he didn't agree with Fosse, demonstrating the respect that the studios had for her decisions. No performer ever had that type of influence, particularly for a woman in that time. She wasn't simply about money either. In the early 1970s, she took a break from Hollywood to back George McGovern's candidacy for president. By the decade's conclusion, she was among the top-paid actresses in the industry. Huge contracts were given to her, including $750,000 for a project that was never even completed. That is more than $6 million in current currency. Only to maintain her name. In 1952, Steve Parker asked Shirley MacLaine to marry him 4 hours after they first met in a pub in Manhattan. It was bold, thrilling, and intensely passionate. They took some time to get married. While working as an understudy in The Pajama Game, she continued to strive for a Broadway career. However, they were married in 1954, right before her Hollywood career took off. Their relationship would be strained by that achievement. She once heard Parker say, "I'll always be Mr. MacLaine if I stay in Hollywood." In 1956, he relocated to Japan in order to pursue a career as a film producer. They then moved to different continents to reside there. They remained married for 28 years, nevertheless. Despite the incomprehensibility of the rest of the world, continuing what MacLaine subsequently referred to as her primary relationship. Their daughter, Sachi, was born in the same year. They briefly seemed like the ideal family, and Shirley described it as life-changing. But with 25 pictures in 15 years, Shirley was a Hollywood firebrand. Legends like Audrey Hepburn, Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra co-starred with her. For her, staying at home wasn't even an option. She claimed that she would never have given up acting to become a full-time mother since everyone would have been more frustrated if she had. That way of thinking influenced her connection with Sachi, and when Sachi shared her side of the story decades later, it all came to light. Shirley and Steve's marriage was quite unusual from the start. They were practicing open marriage long before it was a popular term. She gave a simple explanation. Japan was his home. America was her home. They continued to communicate while doing as they pleased. Shirley wasn't ashamed of it. Regarding the males she was seeing, she was candid. Politicians, actors, and even a prime minister or two. Even though people didn't understand, she didn't mind. That freedom, in her opinion, was what kept the marriage intact. However, at the age of 6, Sachi was taken to Japan to live with her father full-time. Shirley had her reasons, including a drunken nanny, kidnapping rumors, and the conviction that children shouldn't be in Hollywood. Only in the summer did she see her daughter. Sachi claimed at the time that she never felt alone. However, the narrative shifted as she grew older. She claimed in her 2013 memoir that she felt forgotten and alone. She related anecdotes about being cut off from money, being left alone at boarding school for Christmas, and Shirley fabricating a job offer to end one of Sachi's romances. Although Shirley deemed the novel primarily fictional, the harm had already been done. Shirley had made another shocking confession years before. Because she didn't want to be left out, she slept with 3 different people in one day during a political campaign in the 1970s, she acknowledged on Oprah's show in 2011. It wasn't a stunt. It was simply a component of her identity. Although she drew a line at Jack Lemmon because he was too kind and Jack Nicholson because he was too scary, she talked of falling in love with her co-stars. She was no longer pursuing males by that time. She had made Terry, her rat terrier, her best friend. "I'd rather have a loyal, humorous dog than a guy," she added, and she meant it. Her work continued to be as daring as her off-screen life. She co-starred in 2 Mules for Sister Sarah with Clint Eastwood in 1970, and the two got along poorly right away. Don Siegel, the director, described her as unfeminine and claimed that she had too many balls. Everyone on the site experienced strain, and to make matters worse, the majority of the crew became ill in Mexico. It was the last time Clint Eastwood ever took a supporting role, but the movie still made money. That might have been influenced by the encounter with Shirley. Then, to everyone's amazement, she produced a documentary about China in 1975. With the country's recent opening to the West, there was undoubtedly unique access to filming daily life there. The Other Half of the Sky, the end product, was impactful and was nominated for an Oscar. People had never seen this side of her before. She was more than simply an actor. She was a lady with a global perspective and political consciousness. She had taken a long break from acting before revealing that new side. From 1970 to 1977, she was almost absent from Hollywood. However, she was not idle. She explored India, went to far-flung locations, lived with African tribes, and even scaled mountains in Bhutan. It wasn't only sightseeing for her. They were spiritual expeditions. She began studying metaphysics, meditation, and reincarnation. The shift was recognized by critics when she returned at the pivotal moment. She was no longer acting like a clown. She possessed depth, calm, and a deeper quality. However, her return wasn't without its setbacks. She and director Herbert Ross had a falling out on the set of The Turning Point. She believed him to be conceited. The portrayal of her character was the source of their argument. The psychological struggle of a mom who sacrificed all for her family was what she aimed to depict. A tale she was familiar with. Despite receiving 11 Oscar nominations, the movie was a success. But it demonstrated that Shirley MacLaine was more than just a character. Both on and off screen, she was being honest. It was more than simply a career peak for Shirley MacLaine in the early 1980s. A whirlwind of rivalries, drama, and scandal, they continued to reverberate throughout Hollywood. It all began when Anthony Hopkins and I were filming A Change of Seasons in 1980. Two celebrities who could hardly bear to look at one another turned what was meant to be a love romance into a frigid war. Shirley was later described by Hopkins as the most annoying actress he had ever collaborated with. Their personalities and acting philosophies clashed, and the production itself collapsed when the director was replaced in the middle of the shoot. For the sole purpose of keeping the sequences apart, the crew had to schedule them. And Shirley was unflinching when questioned about him decades later. "He's not someone I like either." Even so, that was nothing in comparison to what happened afterward. When Shirley started using endearment in 1983, the real fireworks started. Deborah Winger was her co-star. Ready to battle for every available inch of screen space, younger and wilder. Sparks flew from the instant they met. Wearing earrings, combat boots, a miniskirt, and fur coats reminiscent of Hollywood stars, Shirley made an appearance. It was not stopped by the director, James L. Brooks. He allowed the mayhem to unfold in the hopes that it would develop into on-camera chemistry. And it might have. However, the stage became a battlefield off-camera. Matches of shouting took place. When neither actress would leave her trailer, hours were lost. Additionally, there were times when no one could believe that anything had actually happened, such as when Winger left during a rehearsal, turned around, lowered her skirt, and farted at Shirley. Or when she licked Shirley's leg and Jack Nicholson stood motionless beside them. To annoy Shirley, make fun of her age, and cause a scene, she would arrive late. Whenever she had the opportunity. Years later, when questioned, Winger simply grinned and replied, "There was something true in there." Then the competition for top billing began. Winger demanded to know her name first. Shirley has decades of experience, a history, and nominations for Oscars. Winger was on a roll and didn't hesitate to push. It became so terrible that Paramount had to intervene and make a compromise. In the US, Shirley would be the star, but abroad, she would be the winger. But the harm had already done. They were required to be kept apart for the press junkets. They occupied opposing ends of the theater during the debut. It was all over Hollywood. It was obvious to all that this was a war, not just a movie. But in the end, Shirley prevailed. In the same room on April 9, 1984, the two actresses sat. The Best Actress nominee. Not only was it an honor, but Laurence Olivier delivered a knockout blow when he opened that envelope and announced Shirley MacLaine's name. She said, "I deserve this," as she approached the podium and held her Oscar. Winger attempted a smile. The landing was unsuccessful. Shirley complimented her, describing her performance as turbulent brilliance. But everyone could tell that it came off as sharp. That was it. On screen and off, Shirley had prevailed. Her life off-screen was also changing in that same year. Her marriage to Steve Parker, whom she had been with since 1954, came to an end. They had been in what she called an open marriage, living on different continents. In Japan, he remained. Her job was in Hollywood. Sachi, their daughter, was raised primarily with her father. And her memoir would reveal the emotional wounds years later. Shirley went out on a limb after calling Parker the love of her life, even after it ended. She published the book in 1983 that completely changed the perception of her. It was not an acting exercise. It dealt with out-of-body experiences, ghosts, UFOs, and past lives. It achieved bestseller status. And a joke. Letterman sneered at her. In response, she clapped back and called him a jerk. They continued to read despite the laughter. In 1987, 30 million people watched the ABC miniseries based on the novel. Shirley met aliens, channeled spirits, and flew to the moon in some of the sequences. The critics were perplexed. Audiences were divided. Shirley, however, did not recoil. "Everything is true," she informed Larry King. And it wasn't even the strangest part, she meant every word. Later, Shirley claimed to have lived in Atlantis, that she was the spiritual sibling of a 35,000-year-old warrior spirit named Ramtha, and that her ex-husband had killed her in a previous incarnation as a Mongolian nomad. delivered in an old-world accent by a woman who drank red wine. It's nonsense, according to Carl Sagan. Her admirers were unsure. However, Shirley? She continued without apology and without any fear. Shirley MacLaine had a long and illustrious career in Hollywood. However, her daughter Sachi Parker had a completely different life behind the scenes. One of pain, bewilderment, and remoteness. When Sachi was taken to Japan to live with her father, she was just 2 years old. She was brought up by a governess rather than her parents, and her father struggled with alcoholism. Shirley, on the other hand, was too busy making herself a world celebrity to visit often or be fully present. Instead of feeling like a reunion with a mother, each visit was more like a meeting with a stranger. As Sachi became older, she made an effort to understand her peculiar background. She eventually shared her story in a memoir called Lucky Me in the hopes that it would help her find peace or maybe strengthen her relationship with her mother. What she disclosed, however, was anything from typical. Shirley allegedly informed her that her father was a clone and that her biological father was an astronaut in a different galaxy. Declaring the novel to be fiction, Shirley completely rejected it. However, Sachi maintained her account. She tried, but the emotional gap between them simply widened. She acknowledged that she probably wouldn't have the happy ending she had always dreamed about. Shirley was going through a period of creative rebirth as that part of her life was falling apart in the media. She appeared in Hell on Heels in 2002 as Mary Kay Ash, an investigation into the cosmetics industry. She was nominated for a Golden Globe for her incisive and amusing performance, which was acclaimed by reviewers. Everyone was reminded that Shirley's skill was still very much alive as she brought the character to life with charm and confidence. Shirley then made a significant comeback to the big screen in 2005. In the same year, she reportedly starred in 3 major motion pictures, including Bewitched and In Her Shoes. She portrayed knowledgeable, practical grandparents as well as enchanted matriarchs. Her career was revitalized by these performances, which also exposed her to a younger audience of moviegoers. She demonstrated that age had not dulled her spark by staying active during the following few years with roles in Valentine's Day, Closing the Ring, and Bernie. Shirley took another unanticipated action by 2012. She joined the Downton Abbey cast. The prim and polite British household was disturbed by her portrayal of Martha Levinson, the boisterous and self-assured American mother-in-law. Fans particularly enjoyed her interactions with Maggie Smith, which were witty and had a culture clash. Shirley claimed that prior to landing the part, she had not even watched the program. However, she was proud to be a part of the production and appreciated its beauty once she was on site. As she kept up her efforts, she received accolades and recognition. In 1998, the Golden Globes presented her with the Cecil B. DeMille Award. When she was honored with the AFI Life Achievement Award in 2012, celebrities including Jack Nicholson and Julia Roberts attended. She then received the Kennedy Center Medal from President Obama in 2013. These were more than simply awards. From her first Broadway days to her last movie parts, they were an honor for a lifetime of artistic dedication. Even at 90, Shirley MacLaine is unabashed and fearless. Her most recent admission caught people's attention in Hollywood. She found working with Anthony Perkins to be unbearable. Together, the two starred in the 1958 film The Matchmaker. Things weren't so lovely behind the scenes, though. She received $25,000 for the movie, whereas Perkins received $75,000 for the same work. It is ironic since Perkins was the one who advocated for her to have equal compensation. But their relationship on set suffered as a result. Shirley claimed she was uncomfortable with him all the time. They simply didn't have the same energy. She claimed once that she was never able to discover Perkins' true identity. She said, "I'm not sure what is an act and what isn't." The studio was pressuring Perkins to break up with Tab Hunter and even undergo conversion therapy at the time, although he was silently struggling with his identity. The distance between them made an impression, even if Shirley was unaware of the whole tale at the time. Her goal today is not to make amends for the past. She's come to terms with her desire for privacy and enjoys it. In her autobiography, "I'm Over All That," she stated unequivocally that she would rather have her small puppy, Terry, than a guy. She was serious. Her relationship with that rat terrier was so close that she and he co-wrote the book Out on a Leash. As they discuss anything from gay rights to alien life, the chapters alternate between her voice and the dog's. Despite how odd that sounds, it undoubtedly worked. According to her, they had a closer bond than most people realize. In reality, she thought they had already shared a life in ancient Egypt together. Without a doubt, that blends the intimate and the otherworldly, always with a wink. She is still writing today. Her subsequent works are replete with unvarnished candor, odd concepts, and contemplations that conflate spiritual wisdom with Hollywood rumors. She talked candidly about growing older, challenging medicine, and embracing homeopathy and acupuncture in saging while aging. She had more room to explore these ideas after relocating to a peaceful home near Santa Fe. She discusses synchronicity frequently, suggesting that life's strange tiny coincidences could be clues to something bigger. Indeed, there has always been more to life than just wealth or celebrity. It has involved figuring out who we are, why we are here, and what lies ahead. She is among those who continue to wonder, despite the rapid advancement of technology, what about the soul? The reason why people are still listening after all these years could be due to this.